Okay. Can you all see my screen? Yep. All right, here we go. Perfect. Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Carrie Kelly. I am the programs manager here at the Food Bank of Northern Nevada. And today I will be helping to dive deep into equity, diversity, and inclusion, and really add upon what Tracy had to say earlier by looking at our food distribution as a network. So I wanted to start out, I want to let everybody know that it's really important to participate in this session specifically. I'm going to be asking the group a lot of questions, and I want to hear from you. A lot of this work around equity, diversity, inclusion is so individualized. And of course, we need to hear from every single person to get those points of view. So I want to start out with the reflection on Tracy's talk and the keynote. So what did everyone think? Anybody have thoughts on Tracy's talk on equity, diversity, and inclusion, the introduction? Everyone can hear me, right?
Yeah, I think it was really important work to be doing, and I think it's always good to like bring it back to that, because sometimes our work is so busy, we can get so caught up in the day-to-day, you know, getting the food distribution out and the logistics of all that, but really we always want to be doing service delivery with that equity lens. So just really being intentional about how we're doing the service delivery is really important. So I'm excited to talk further on it.
Definitely, thank you.
I enjoyed it because of the equity versus equality difference. A lot of times we just make assumptions based on our own backgrounds and don't realize we're not talking the same language. I enjoyed that part of it especially.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, we'll go into a little bit of that during this session as well. And it really hit me to the core when Tracy said we don't frequently talk about how fundamentally different our lived experiences are. And I thought that was very interesting. It's something that we don't self-reflect often, and we're really given the opportunity now to self-reflect on every aspect of our lives. So it's exciting. How do you guys feel after the talk? Do you feel inspired? Do you feel excited for the future? You feel uncomfortable? What thoughts and ideas came forward?
Personally, it was a reminder that we need to be better about inclusiveness and meeting people where they're at and thinking outside of our box as to how to invite people into the conversation.
And listen to them too.
A simple thing that I think we forget sometimes, especially when we're out at a food distribution and we're go, and our clients are there trying to tell us something that is significantly impacting their lives, and we're kind of like, we got to get you your food, we got to get this going. But taking that minute to really listen to them, because it could change the way that that we do things. So that's great. Thank you everyone for sharing. We'll have another opportunity to share more in a minute. So I wasn't sure what Tracy was going to say, so some of this information may be duplicative, but I'll go through it and just let me know if you guys have any questions. So Feeding America recently released their statement on equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I really like a lot of this text that they have. It says, we believe we can only achieve our vision, mission, and goals with a demonstrated commitment through words and actions to equity, diversity, and inclusion. We seek to deepen our understanding of and perspective on the challenges facing those we serve, many of which are rooted in long-standing patterns of social inequities, exclusions, and divisions. And then they add on another piece about our staff and volunteers. When we attract and retain diverse talent and foster an environment where the unique skills, capabilities, viewpoints, and dissenting opinions of all employees are valued, we enhance empathy, creativity, and ultimately innovation. So that's a lot. And Tracy touched on that earlier, that creating a diverse environment puts us ahead in the long run. And we're not always talking about specifically race. We can be talking about a lot of things. And in addition to race and ethnicity. And that photo of the boardroom full of politicians, I don't know what to call them, talking about women's rights was extremely impactful, because these are sometimes the decisions that we are faced with as we're talking about the food distribution model, and making sure that we're making the decisions that are equitable across our entire network. So I like that they broke it into 3 different sections, where first we're talking about our commitment to the community, and then how we're serving the community, and then also what we're doing ourselves to help this work move forward. All right. And I do have some definitions here. Tracy did a really great job of defining equity, diversity, and inclusion, and kind of showing the pictures. And she is right that we all have our own definition of this. But I really liked this definition, so I wanted to include it. And equity can be defined as the guarantee of fair treatment, access, opportunity, and advancement, while at the same time striving to identify and eliminate barriers that have prevented the full participation of some groups. The principles of equity acknowledge that there are historically underserved and underrepresented populations, and that fairness regarding those unbalanced conditions is needed to assist equality in the provision of effective opportunities to all groups. So this equity is not always just equal. It's, as Tracy mentioned, it's not everybody gets a size 5 shoe. It's really understanding the community and understanding what size shoe everybody needs, and making sure that everybody gets something that they need. Diversity, the presence of difference, is the definition that I found. And of course, this can be defined in so many other different ways, but acknowledging that there is difference between every single person, volunteer, staff member, client that we're dealing with on a daily basis, and approaching that in an empathetic manner is really great. And then inclusion, bringing them in. The act of creating environments in which any individuals or groups can be and feel welcomed, respected, supported, and valued to fully participate and bring their full authentic selves to work. An inclusive and welcoming climate embraces differences and others respect in the words, actions, and thoughts of all people. So inclusion is something, I'm looking at the words welcomed, respected, supported, valued. And so in Tracy's example, when she was talking about if one woman was in the group of politicians and it was 50 white men and then one woman, having that person feel welcomed and supported and valued in that environment would be challenging. And so that's the benefit of having a diverse environment. But I really take this inclusion definition home when I'm thinking about just general relationships within my life. And do I act in a way that people are able to talk to me and feel welcome and feel supported and really feel valued at the end of the day. So as Nicole mentioned, a lot of this work, we're calling it, a lot of this work is ourselves and kind of looking in the mirror and saying, how do I do that? Or how did that person portray me when I made that statement? Or how did they potentially portray that statement in a different way than I meant it? And so a lot of these definitions, of course, are just that, definitions, and we can all take them in different ways. So we've mentioned this equity, diversity, and inclusion journey several times, and it is a journey. It's not a destination. We're not running towards this one specific goal, but rather appreciating the walk that we're on and appreciating the things that we learn and discover along the way. And a lot of the things that we're going to work through are thought-provoking. So it's an opportunity for short and long-term success. So as all these thoughts and as all these feelings come up, we're able to make small improvements, make large improvements in order to get there. And the equity, diversity, and inclusion work is not a quick fix. It is not confrontational. It's not about changing you, and it's not about problems. So it's hard. So this is hard stuff because some things could be offending or challenging based on our individual biases that we have built into our personalities and our ways of living. And that's not what this work is about. It's about looking at the big picture and looking about what's going on as a whole. And I would disagree with it's not about changing you, because sometimes I feel like some of this will change us and our viewpoints just as individuals. So something to think about, and I'm excited to embark on this journey with you all. So I know that we all have our individual organizations, but here at the Food Bank of Northern Nevada, we have a mission and vision statement. And our mission statement reads, feeding the hungry today and solving hunger for tomorrow through community partnership. And our vision reads, healthy food, every person, every day. And so what we're gonna do as a group today is kind of dive into this vision of healthy food, every person, every day, because I think it is kind of a common denominator. That's an assumption that I'm making, that we're all in this business to get food to food insecure individuals. And this statement has a lot of meat. And so we're going to go through one by one, and I'll ask for some participation on how you believe you and your organization are either doing really well in these categories or where you see some opportunities. So I'll begin on the healthy food. So sometimes when we are distributing food, we like to make an assumption of what healthy food may be. And just like defining equity, diversity, and inclusion, defining something as healthy for a specific community sometimes isn't accurate. So healthy food is one that is a challenge, and we want to make sure that we're getting food out that is helpful to our clients that we serve. But a lot of times, if somebody, just as an example, if somebody has diabetes and we only have bread and potatoes that day, that won't really happen. But sometimes that could be a huge challenge for that person, because they're not able to receive that food that is going to help them in their life. So does anybody have any challenges that they see from an equity, diversity, and inclusion lens that this healthy food statement is challenging? The other ones are easier.
I see this statement as challenging, as very much as you mentioned, with healthy being very individual, especially right now as we are creating boxes, and we've moved away from that client choice model in the era of COVID. We see where there are a lot of people who have sodium requirements and such. And so much of the canned foods, which are more shelf stable and make up a large part of our boxes with TFAP and such, are higher in sodium content. So trying to balance those needs, especially as we're not doing that client choice model, is really very, very challenging.
That's a great point. Thank you so much. Anybody else? Bringing up client choice is definitely huge when it comes to healthy food. A lot of times we'll say, okay, healthy food for this person because they have diabetes or some other illness within our prescription pantry program, but they might have children at home that would love that macaroni and cheese, and we don't really know what's going on behind the scenes with that family. So we also can't make judgments about healthy food, about what a person may be taking at the pantry or something like that.
The other point that just made me think when you said mac and cheese, that I've discovered is healthy food. Being able to give healthy food out doesn't mean that the person will be able to prepare that healthy food either. So it's really dependent on what they can, their situation and what they can cook, and sometimes we get caught up in providing food that's really healthy, but it's not accessible because they only have a microwave, or there are other challenges that prevent them from eating what we see as very, very healthy food. But without an oven, you can't do anything with that flour. You can't bake that loaf of bread or such.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Thank you so much for sharing. A lot of times we have all these tips and tricks on, just throw it in the crock pot, or just bake up a loaf of bread. It's much cheaper than the store. But there's a lot of limitations that our clients have that that's another way that we kind of have to check ourselves. We kind of have to say, okay, let me put myself in their shoes and see how I actually feel about the situation. So that's
I
great.
have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sometimes they can't chew because they have no teeth, and healthy foods like an apple is impossible. So I think that's another part of it.
That's a huge one. I'll never forget my first year in food banking. I brought an entire basket of apples to a senior fair, and it was a disaster. So yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. All right, I'm going to move on here. Oh, sorry.
Give them the healthy food, but a lot of the people pass it up. They don't want the fresh vegetables and stuff. They'd rather have the processed stuff.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know.
And I usually tell people that if they can't chew it, then they can make applesauce or just cook the apples so it's softer for them.
That's a great tip. Yeah. And that's, a lot of people don't know how to prepare these things. And so it's easy to just say, yeah, go ahead and eat healthy. But the reality behind that is often more complicated.
Yeah, I had one client one time, and she's like, I have to take all this medicine, and I have this, and I have that. And when we took her around the pantry, that was when we had the pantry open. And she says, well, we don't eat that stuff, any of the healthy stuff. I said, yeah, and that's why all that stuff's wrong with you. You need to eat more healthy food, and you'll feel a lot better. I probably shouldn't tell them that, but.
Yeah, that's kind of the hard part is working with people and trying not to
It's kind of the lead. You can lead the horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So yeah, we'll go on to every person. So this one is a little bit easier when we're thinking about equity, diversity, inclusion, trying to include every person in our plans and in our thoughts as far as food distribution. So what are your thoughts and ideas about this one?
We serve everybody that comes to us, so I think we do all right.
Thank you, Leslie. Yeah, I think it's challenging in the people that come to your door are just a fraction of the people that need food. And of course, COVID-19 has sent us into a ton of more challenges than we had previously. But it really made me think a lot more about the people that aren't able to get to us, and how many food insecure people there are that don't have that access. So that's great.
So
It's not just though the people who can't get to us, it's the people who, how do we reach out to the people who don't want to utilize our services for some reason or another? They don't feel comfortable either because there's a stigma around it, or because they don't feel that we've been welcoming enough to their community. Our communication is not appropriate for their community in and of itself. You know, we don't have enough, say, outreach within the Spanish speaking community in Spanish, for instance, if that could be a case, or they don't feel comfortable coming in because there's not enough Spanish speakers within the pantry. I think these are some other real challenges, as well as the one that you brought up with those who just can't come in. You know, really, we say we'll serve anybody who walks through our door, but how do they know we're there how do we know that they're comfortable coming to us, that we are communicating effectively and being that inclusive organization.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Thank you so much for sharing. Here at FBNN, we in 2020 we started just referring people directly to our website due to not wanting to pass papers back and forth at distributions. So we said, oh, just go to the website and you'll find everything you need there. But our website was only in English, so that cut out a nice chunk of our population. And we recently, a huge win is we recently got it fully translated into Spanish, and I hope to work towards other languages in the future. So that's good. What else on every person?
So we're doing both a home delivery and a drive-through model, but I'd like to echo, like, do people really know about us? They have to kind of contact us to get signed up for that home delivery. There are a couple different avenues, like they can call, they can email, a lot of them are referrals from other service providers. But something we're kind of struggling with right now is some people don't, if you're on delivery, you kind of have to get it every week, just for logistics. And I'm like trying to figure out if people want it, once a month, and how do you kind of navigate that? Because if they come to drive through, they can get it however many times they want a month. So kind of trying to figure out, like, maybe they don't need it every week, but still need some food. So that's our challenge.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. We're so used to people reaching out and just giving as much food as possible, but sometimes that's not needed. But it is hard to be individualized when you're dealing with the whole operation. So that's some of just the challenges that we're facing. It looks like somebody in the chat said, do we ask them what they want? So that could be more of the client choice stuff. Are we letting them choose the foods that they and their families are needing, or are we just saying, here we go? Of course, COVID-19 has brought so many challenges that some of this stuff is not unavoidable. So yeah. Any last comments before we move to everyday? All right, so last one here, every day. And so I've done this a couple times with different groups, and it seems like people sometimes get stuck in a rut of thinking of just days of the week. So I'll help this one along a little. Of course, days of the week is an easy one. If you're open Monday through Friday, and that's kind of a normal work week for us, and it's a normal work week for other people as well that may be in need of our services. But to add another layer, so a lot of times we'll be giving a box of food, and that may be however many pounds, and we might say, okay, that's 2 to 3 days worth of food. What is that person doing for the rest of the day, or rest of the days in that week? Of course, we're not meant to feed people 100% of the time, but how are we helping to ensure that people are eating every day in our network? Are we getting them access to SNAP? Are we helping them apply for SNAP? To fill in what the pantries and what other food distribution models aren't helping with. So really thinking about the big picture of their life and them eating every single day. Anybody else have anything on that one? Somebody in the chat said rural communities, we have less distributions. Some of the food bank mobile harvest program usually visits rural communities once per month, whereas the Washoe County will be in regions of Washoe County once per week, just logistical challenges. I know that there's several rural partners on right now, so there's definitely distributions in rural areas, but it may be one pantry instead of 10 that they have access to.
We always try to recommend that larger families take larger quantities so everybody gets some.
Yeah, great point.
Tell them about the food kitchens that serve meals every day, plus the other food pantries that are around that they can get access to.
Yeah. All right, anybody else?
I think this comes back into listening and being open to talking with clients about what their needs really are. You know, they may only need a little bit extra to help them through the week. They may need a lot more, and that's where you continue to open up that conversation about food stamps or other soup kitchens, as was mentioned, if you will. Transportation, you help work through those barriers. That's really where you can deepen that level of understanding.
Yeah, definitely. And without doing that, we really don't know. And so I definitely think that it is a challenge to give that individualized service, but it does make a huge difference on people's lives. All right, well, thank you guys so much for sharing. That was really helpful, just to give me some insight on what you guys are seeing out in the field, and it kind of brought me to the fact that we're all seeing very similar things here in Northern Nevada. And even though this is the food bank's mission and vision, I think it really is shared among our entire network, because they're very simple words that have a pretty big impact on the work that we do. So anybody have any questions before I move on about this? We all good? Okay, I'm gonna move into some more that Tracy did mention. She had a slide that showed an iceberg, but I think this iceberg specifically is very impactful. Sorry, I'm hoping that you guys can all see it. The words are pretty small, but the things that we see when we look at a person include their gender, their race, their skin color, age, and then we might get a little bit about that second level there, which is nationality, physical ability, ethnicity, wealth, social status, culture, and religion. But most of that second level is kind of hidden. We'll just see a little bit depending on how open people are and how much they would like to share. But there's so much below the surface within every single individual that we really don't see, and that by just looking at somebody you cannot assume. And this was really impactful to me just because of the impact that this graphic kind of gives. We know that you can only see so much of a person, but looking at all of the things below the surface that we don't think about on a daily basis, life experiences, value systems, learning styles, all of this is extremely important in working relationships, in personal relationships, and definitely in client relationships. And even just learning styles specifically is a pretty huge one. If you're training a new volunteer and you're not seeing eye to eye, just assuming that they're not going to be a good volunteer, they might just need a different style of teaching, or yeah, so it's really interesting. And Tracy did show this graphic, but she showed it in several different ways, and this is just an additional way that we can look at it. Equality is everybody having the exact same size box, and you can see the taller guy is like he can see the whole game. The middle guy is he can barely see over the fence, and then this small one, he can't see over the fence at all. So then you look at equity, and it looks like the tall person can still see over the fence without the box. The middle one is given 1 box, and then the smallest one is given 2, so that they can all see clearly. But I think this graphic just recently switched to have this third element. I remember seeing this graphic years ago with just the first 2 to show the difference between equality and equity. But the social change and justice aspect that Tracy mentioned is we're going to break down that entire fence. We're going to get rid of the boxes, and we're going to make it so that everybody can see the game. And that is such a deep aspect of all of this work that we're doing. We're going to remove those barriers completely so that we can move on as a collective unit towards a goal and not have these barriers in the way for anyone. So yeah. Does anybody have thoughts on these 2 graphics?
Paints a pretty clear picture.
Yeah,
About
no, thank you.
the equality, equity, and social change.
Perfect. Awesome. So moving on, this graphic is from Feeding America, and it goes into national food insecurity by race and ethnicity. And you can see some inequalities here. It looks like 1 in 12 white non-Hispanic individuals were in food insecure households, where we look at 1 in 6 Latino, 1 in 5 Black, and 1 in 4 Native American households were food insecure. So it's a greater proportion based on their racial and ethnic groups. And yeah, Feeding America dives really deep into this and shows a lot of disparities and ways that we can improve. And the next graphic here shows a little bit more just based on race and ethnicity, the food insecurity rates. And so I think one key thing here is there's a lot happening around race and ethnicity, and as where we need to be respectful to everyone and make sure that everybody is served. Not everyone in those groups are going to meet these requirements. So an example of that is we had a grant that we were working on, and they wanted the focus to be on underserved populations focused on race and ethnicity. And we looked at a school that was primarily white, and it had a small chunk of Hispanic individuals and a small chunk of Black individuals. And we we can't make the assumption that those people are going to be food insecure just based on their race and ethnicity. So we need to check ourselves in multiple ways. Like, yes, we want to change these numbers. We want to make sure that everyone is facing an equal food insecurity rate, even though that sounds terrible. We don't want certain groups to face food insecurity at a higher rate than other groups. But we also can't just go into communities assuming that that group is meeting all of these numbers. So I think that's where we can really do our work with surveying and really understanding communities. And I'll go into that a little bit more at the end on how you can help. But these graphs are very impactful, and you can see the stark increase at the Great Recession, and unfortunately it does end in 2019, so you can't see the increase due to COVID-19 and in 2020, but I'm definitely curious to see what these charts look like in the future. So some Nevada data that I just pulled off the census website, about 7.5% of households don't have a computer. 16.8% of households don't have internet. So when we're talking about access and information sharing, like, oh, hey, just go on our website and you can find our calendar. Thinking about this data and thinking about it's not as simple for some people to just hop on and go on a website. Of course, we all have our phones and we all have some internet, but not everybody does. I just said we all have, and that's not an accurate statement. So 30% of people live in a household in which a language other than English is spoken at home. And so that's a really large number. So when we're thinking about documentation, when we're thinking about media outreach, when we're thinking about websites, looking at the spoken languages within your communities is really important to better understand how the end user is going to interpret your information. 8.6% of people under the age of 65 have a disability. So that's a pretty high number that surprised me. So thinking about the ramps and stuff at your food pantries, or thinking about parking, or in the drive-through model, if a disabled person drives through your pantry, are they going to be able to get that food then from their car into their home? So thinking through all of these potential challenges that our clients may face. And then this one surprised me. Population per square mile is 24.6. Of course, we have a ton of just very desolate areas here in Nevada, but the fact is that our state is very rural, and especially here in northern Nevada, resources could be very far away. And so people without transportation and people with those challenges present a lot of other struggles that take a little bit extra understanding. So I included a couple of examples here, some of which we've talked about, and I want to leave a couple minutes at the end for you all to ask any additional questions. But some examples include offering flyers and handouts in languages other than English, offering drive-through or walk-up distributions, operating the pantry in a client choice model. Of course, in the world of COVID-19, that is not always possible, but if the world gets back to normal soon, being able to offer that client choice model will be important. listening to client stories when we have a moment, listening, because that could always that could sometimes tell a little bit more about what they're going through, and we may be able to make some small changes in our operations based on their stories. And then the food bank has the Feeding Our Community survey happening for the next year. And that survey is going to give us some client feedback on how we're doing and how our operations are running. And so anytime we're able to survey clients, it's really helpful to get their opinion and to make sure that their opinions are impacting and being inclusive in our decision-making process. All right. And then lastly, I just have this cute little image, and I wanted to encourage everyone. There was a very simple phrase that I learned the other day, and I wanted to explain it and encourage you guys to use this phrase as well. It's call in versus call out. So as we move forward and as we use all the words that both myself and Tracy shared today, if you have somebody who's going through something or that does something that you don't quite understand, instead of calling that person out and saying, "Hey, why'd you do that?" or in a mean way, calling that person in and talking about this situation and saying, "Hey, okay, we just had this experience and this is how I was feeling, and why did you react that way? I genuinely want to know so that I can learn for the future." And when we think about equity, diversity, and inclusion, being inclusive to everybody's thoughts and emotions and viewpoints on every topic is really important. So that's why I really like this phrase, call that person into your bubble and talk about it and learn from them, because you will learn something, and that interaction will be much more productive than if it's just calling somebody out. So yeah, I hope that is helpful to everyone. And I wanted to leave some time. We have about 2 minutes left, so I was hoping that somebody would have some questions or comments, ideas. We did a lot earlier, but I appreciate everybody's participation earlier.
I would like to add into the call in instead of call out. I think that's a huge part of this topic. You know, sometimes we don't realize when something happens, if it's at work or even personal or whatever it may be, whenever something goes wrong and maybe we respond quickly instead of stopping and thinking about what it is we're doing. And then later on we go, well, man, I could have handled that differently. So I really, really like that aspect because I believe that aligns perfectly with this topic.
Thank you, Stacey. Yeah, I agree. I think it's just more of a check yourself moment that I talked about earlier, like looking in the mirror and saying, okay, how can I do that differently next time? So yeah.
Well, and I think it creates more of a learning experience. So the person who maybe made that racist comment will change their behavior and not feel so attacked when you call them into the conversation. Definitely.
Yeah. And definitely when it comes to really intense conversations, when we start talking about stuff like that, it's very important to make it a learning opportunity for everybody involved. And as Tracy said earlier, sometimes it's best to just step away from the conversation if it's in your and the other person's best interest. So depending on the situation, just figuring out what is going to work best for everyone, but giving it that time that it deserves. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate everybody being part of this session, and I hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you in the main room to end this.